Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana. I am your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. What's going on?
Well, yesterday I was outside and I was throwing the wiffle ball. This is a little thing that I do. I've got I throw wiffle balls sometimes in my front yard. I've got a little strike zone. It's like a little PVC frame with a metal plate in the middle of it. It's my strike zone. And, it's just a good way to blow off some steam, throw for 5-10 minutes, or if I'm hanging out with my son, I'll throw a few wiffle balls while he's playing. And I can pretend like I'm Greg Maddux or whatever. And yesterday I was throwing, I was throwing a little bullpen, and I maybe threw 50, 60 pitches. And then on a inside fastball, little two-seamer, I tweaked my right hip flexor.
Okay.
I just planted and I turned, ripped one in there, and I felt something go
outside
in my right
of the
hip.
gym.
Outside of the gym. Yes, that's right. That's right. So, if you think about the pitching motion, there's, a lot of rotation that happens in your hips. And so that for a righty like me, that right hip flexor gets stretched every time you throw the ball. You plant your left foot, your front foot, and then you twist and turn and throw the ball. So there we go. I had a tweaked hip, and it hurts pretty good. Anytime I externally rotate my hip, or if I just sort of like stretch it laterally in either direction, it pinches. It hurts.
Ouch.
And that's what we want to talk about today is, in life, sometimes shit hurts. And you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to learn how to deal with it in training and outside of training too.
And guess what, people? Because I'm talking to you. You're not in control of this shit. Oh, yeah. You are not in control of this shit.
That's right.
You can minimize or maximize how much pain you're in through things that you do, but you don't get to decide whether something just stops hurting or not. You have no control over that.
That's right.
That's baked into the cake. Some of you have shitty backs, knees, hips, hands, thumbs, random shit, right? Back and hips are the most common ones that I deal with, and knees would be next. Then shoulders, I'd say knees and shoulders, depending on the person. But back and hips are probably by far the most common because we're bipeds. Our backs are in compression all day, whether we're sitting, standing, or walking. And, thousands and thousands of movements there, right? The vertebrae are extending and flexing thousands of times a day, So most of us have disc herniations. Not all of us get symptoms, though. So, I probably have disc herniations. I don't have back pain at the time. Let's see, my engineered wood. I'm going to knock on that. Because that is not me being a braggart. I have a 39-year-old back. I could probably start hurting when I have a 45-year-old back, 50-year-old back, 60-year-old back. Rip never had back injuries until his late 60s. Then he said,
right.
When you have a 65-year-old back, any degree of movement in the vertebrae can easily cause pain, and you may not be able to see it when you're coaching somebody. And he meant in person when he says coaching.
Yeah,
and
right.
Now we're talking about older adults there. So that's we're going to break this down into components. But the key message that I want to send out now, because I'm dealing with this quite a bit, is that you don't get to control whether something hurts or not.
That's right.
You don't have control over that. That's nature.
But you could have like not thrown the wiffle ball. Maybe your volume was too high.
No.
Oh no. Wait a minute. No high volumes. That's a good thing. Never mind.
High volume cures erectile dysfunction. Makes your dick bigger.
Right.
Yeah. Go do 25 sets of 10.
Just need more volume.
And it's better than Viagra. You stay harder longer. You add about 6 inches to it. You could be a porn star.
More satisfied.
Yeah, and it cures hair baldness too. I mean, shit. Let's not stop there. It cures baldness. It makes the blind see again. I mean, volume is the miracle drug for everything.
Let's all praise.
I mean, I'm constipated today. Maybe I need to do 16 sets of 10.
Yeah. Well, how many sets of 10 did you do last time?
Or, I mean, if you want to do 5, you can do that too. Just do 50 sets
Just
of them.
do more.
Yeah,
Just do more of them.
Look, man, my tonnage is high. I did so much tonnage today.
Oh, bro, my tonnage. Oh, my
with
God.
the pink dumbbells.
Oh, my God. I've never once bragged about my tonnage. I've never even considered whether or not I set a tonnage PR.
You know,
personally,
it's not a PR. It's bullshit.
It's not a PR. It's bullshit. Yeah. I used to, just for the hell of it sometime, like early on in my coaching, I would calculate like weekly tonnage for some lifters, and but never for myself. And then I realized at some point, I was like, well, I've never done this for myself, and it's never really mattered, and it has not driven any meaningful programming decisions. So, what's the point? But yeah, okay. So yeah, we digress a little bit.
We're gonna shit on volume in another episode, and probably another one after that. At least once every other month, we got to shit on volume.
Of course, but my point is, there are some people that are like, well, you could have avoided this movement or that, or this caused that. Like, oh, it's the pitching that caused that.
No,
it's easy to think that because that's what happened when I felt it. When I felt the strain. That's what it is. It's a strain. It's a grade 1 mild muscle strain. It's a pull.
That terminology is not complicated enough. We need to get Will Morrison on here so he can help us make up some better words.
Well, I mean, I think that's what our friend Double D, Dr. Darren Deaton, would say. Is
let's get him in here.
It's a grade 1 strain, which is basically the same thing as a muscle tear. It's just on a spectrum, right? It's like the muscle gets stretched to the point where there's some sort of intramuscular damage. But whatever, it doesn't matter. But going back to my point though, is that oftentimes when somebody tweaks something, whether it's in the gym or outside of the gym, it happens doing something. Not always. Sometimes you just wake up and shit hurts. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you sneeze and shit hurts. Sometimes you bend over and tie your shoes and all of a sudden shit hurts. But sometimes you are doing like a movement or an activity or whatever, and something pops or pulls or whatever. And it's easy to think like, oh, well, that was the thing that caused it. No, I don't think so. The human body's much more complicated than that. And, it's hard. It's hard to really find a reason or a cause for something in a lot of cases. The point was, I use my body a lot. And I'm also 34, so I'm not a spring chicken. I'm not old, but I'm not young either. And, sometimes muscles get pulled in a direction they don't want to be pulled in, and they don't have the elasticity that they should for whatever you're doing in that moment. Whatever the case is, it happens. And there's nothing you can do from a preventative standpoint to avoid that. Like you could just avoid moving your body, right? You could just do nothing, but then you're going to have other problems. Your shit's going to hurt for a different reason. Right?
Just avoid breathing.
Stop breathing.
Become a breatharian.
You don't want to pop a rib.
No.
Breathing too hard. I've had some novices do that.
Look, just become a breatharian. Remember those?
Just imagine breathing. You don't actually need to breathe.
No, just as long as you eat quarter pounders from McDonald's, you're okay. You don't remember this. This predates both of us actually, but because of my years and years of academic education, I was exposed to the concept of breatharianism, which was big in the early 80s.
This is actually a thing. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I thought you were just taking the piss, as they would say.
No. I was not taking the piss. This existed in the early 80s. The guy's name was Wiley Brooks. And he I don't know if it was
Wiley.
Hold on, let me look this back up. Let me breatharian.
Wiley Con Brooks.
No, so it wasn't that they didn't breathe. The not breathing part was me taking a piss. What they were saying, what he was claiming was that you didn't need to live off anything but air.
Okay.
Humans can live just fine by replacing food with the sun and the passive inhalation of cosmic microdust. And then they caught him eating quarter pounders from McDonald's.
That's amazing.
And then
that's amazing.
He said, why do you, and they asked him, why do you advocate people only eat double quarter pounders with cheese meals and drink Diet Coke? And he said, because they're the only things that are not radioactive. Which are probably the most radioactive things. You ever let a McDonald's hamburger sit for a year?
Oh my God.
I saw that in my dietetic internship. So the gentleman that ran the kitchen was a health nut. So it made the kitchen part, the food service management part of my internship more interesting because he was into dietetics,
Yeah.
And not then usually or not, a lot of the time they're, there to manage kitchens and sell food, in the hospital or provide food to the patients in a cost-effective manner. It's usually not a super health nut or somebody that's, super into this, but there's more and more RDs taking that job, but in this case, it was a guy who was not an RD. He had a management background. And he was really into health and fitness. So he had a McDonald's chicken sandwich, I think, sitting on his desk for like a year and a half, and it looked identical to like a fresh one.
Oh, man.
But Wiley Brooks says it's the only thing that's not it wasn't a double quarter pounder with cheese. I guess I fucked up. He should have let that sit.
Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese. They call it a quarter pound with cheese in France. Royale with cheese. Well, what do they call a Big Mac? Well, Big Mac's a Big Mac. It's called Le Big Mac.
Le Big Mac.
Le Big Mac.
There was actually a show. I remember it. Man, I maybe I saw the pilot. I don't even know if this got picked up. Maybe it ran for like a season or something. But there was some like shitty, like sitcom, teenage sitcom in the 90s. It was basically like a copy of Boy Meets World. But the premise was, it was like called like Teen Angel or something. And the premise was that this guy, like these two guys were hanging out and like high school kids, and they're just hanging out, like playing video games or whatever. And then one guy sees under his friend's bed, there's an old cheeseburger like that. It's like still in the wrapper. It's like, bro, dude. And he's like, I'll give you $5 if you eat it. He's like, okay.
Oh, jeez.
This is the 90s, right? $5 is, you can buy some things with that. Well, anyway, so he eats the burger and he dies.
Holy shit! This is a show,
and he
right?
comes back. So he comes back. The show starts with like that. So that happens. He dies, and he comes back and like hangs out with his friend as his guardian angel. So he's dead, but he's like, looking over his shoulder. So the kid goes through like typical teenage problems, and his friend is supposed to be his guardian angel. It's so ridiculous.
Jesus.
I don't know why that popped in my head, but it didn't make it very far.
Yeah,
needless to say.
So, injuries, right? Injuries, pain. Well, we're talking about pain here. What's an injury? Yeah. There's a lot of ways to define an injury. To me, it's like a broken arm. That's like a serious injury. Broken leg, torn pec. That makes all the bruising,
Sure.
But like, my back hurts. I tweaked my back. I mean, I guess that's an injury, but injury is a broad term. So it's there's various levels of severity, like where I really want to kind of start this is, let's start with you fucking people that have had something hurt since as far back as you can remember. You had a bad back in high school. You had a bad hip or a knee in high school, right? Guess what? Lifting doesn't cure that, but neither does physical therapy, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Neither does chiropractic in a lot of cases. In some cases, lifting makes things go away indefinitely. That does happen sometimes. That's not the rule, though. That is the exception. That happens less frequently than things hurt less often or less severely. That tends to be what happens. You're not going to cure a bad back. You're not going to get pain-free. You're going to be pain-free longer. But you're not going to be pain-free forever. It's going to be less shitty. Your bad, fucked up back is going to be less bad and less fucked up as a result of getting the surrounding muscles and connective tissues stronger. And you can insert whatever joint you want in there. Sometimes these problems require surgery, and that's a different topic that we'll probably touch
get there.
on. We'll get there.
We'll get there in a little bit. Well, so here's how I think about it. I don't like to use the term injury for this. Like, I don't like if we've got a very minor injury, like I would not call what happened to me yesterday an injury. It's not an injury. And here's why. The way that I think about it, my unscientific term, is a tweak is something that hurts and causes pain. It may impede your ability to function in the gym a little bit, but it's nothing you can't work around. An injury, on the other hand, is it causes a disruption in normal function of a joint, right? I mean, because we're talking about orthopedic injuries typically,
Right.
But it causes a disruption in normal function of joint. So like if I tear my shoulder, then I can't raise my arm overhead. Okay, I don't have the shoulder flexion I used to. That's an injury. Okay, it's an injury because it's definitely going to mess up my training in the gym, but it's also messing with my normal everyday function. So that's kind of my line for what I call an injury. Anything less than that is a tweak, and there are bad tweaks. You can hurt something in your back that hurts real bad. Might walk with a little bit of a limp for a couple weeks. That would be a real bad tweak, and you've got little tweaks like what I experienced. Right, this is going to go away in a few days, probably, based on previous experience. But the function is not really impeded, and I'll give you an example. So yesterday, I also had to squat. I had volume squats were on the menu. Oh man, so I gotta walk downstairs. Oh, my hip hurts. This sucks. Okay, well, the first thing I do is I go and I start warming up for the squat. And immediately I noticed that, when I'm performing a squat with proper technique, in the way as described by the starting strength model, then I'm fine, right? It does require some external rotation of the hip to squat, but not an extreme amount. And so I get in there, I start squatting, and I'm fine. There's no pain whatsoever. It's really just for me, it's twisting, it's rotation, and it's a dynamic, like a powerful movement that causes pain, like throwing a ball. Okay, so I'm just not going to throw a ball for a few days, but I can squat. And I got in there and I warmed up, and I was a little bit more cautious than normal. I was paying attention as I was warming up to see if there's a load at which things got worse. It didn't, so I just carried on as normal. I'm fine. Okay, so that's definitely a tweak. It did not impede my function in the gym whatsoever. I still was able to train and do exactly what I wanted to do. It just had to be a little bit more cautious. Okay, and I think that one of the things about training that's really important is that it doesn't just prepare your body and make your body more resilient. It also prepares your mind to handle these situations, right? When you have a lot of training under your belt and you've learned how to train through tweaks like this, small ones and big ones, and even, heaven forbid, maybe you've even had to train through some injuries or train around some injuries and do rehab. Well, you learn in that process that your body can do more than you think it can. And you're capable of working around things and actually being useful, even though shit hurts. And that's a very, very valuable thing. Most people that I know that have, quote unquote, bad backs, especially older people, I can think of a handful of older people. Everybody, you all know them, right? You all know someone like this. They have a bad back, and when they hurt their back, there's something happens. They get back spasm. Like I said, they're on the toilet, they're tying their shoes, some mundane thing. When they throw out their back, quote unquote, they're laid up in bed. They have to lay on the couch for like 3 days.
Right.
Okay, when that happens to me, it sucks, it hurts, but I'm hauling firewood and I'm, picking up 60-pound sacks of chicken feed and hauling them around. I'm lifting weights still. It doesn't really slow me down very much at all. And that's a combination of my training, which has strengthened my body, and it's also the training that strengthened my mind to know that I'm still capable of doing things. So it's not a small thing.
No. And the longer you do this, the faster you recover from these things. And the less stressful it is psychologically. What I've noticed when working with people with pain, which, by the way, is going to happen, it is not abnormal. It is normal.
Right. Yeah.
Shit hurts, Yeah. Some of us get lucky and shit doesn't hurt very often. I have problems with elbow tendonitis. I had hand tendonitis. I had a hernia at one point. And what else did I have? I had knee tendonitis that had nothing to do with lifting. I was just a sedentary pile of shit. So I had to start walking.
Sure.
What else did I have? I tore an adductor when I was squatting wrong, so that was lifting related, but I was squatting.
That's an injury.
Yeah, that was an injury.
Yeah.
That was an injury. And I got coaching, and here I am. I haven't had that happen again. Knock on my, well, that's real wood there, I think. But this idea that, especially for people that have been in pain before, this is where it's a real problem. If you've had pain before and you think that you're going to find a way to make the pain go away forever, you are setting yourself for failure, frustration, and annoyance. And I see it all the time. I get I get people, they have a good, nice linear progression and everything's great, and then their bad back tweaks out, right? And it has nothing to do with lifting. It has to do with having a bad fucking back. And those tweaks are going to happen periodically, and they probably would happen more if you didn't train. However, I run into this scenario where the lifter who is now in pain is now fixated on the pain, and that's all he or she thinks about. Nonstop, thinking about the pain and trying to will it to go away and trying to use all these different modalities and silly bullshit to try and make it go away. Because now the focus is I have to command the pain to go away. And the irony of it is, and a physical therapist taught me this, one that I heavily disagreed with on exercise at the time. Now we're more in line because she's relaxed over the years. But when she was a new therapist, she was on the squats are bad for your back, or deadlifts are bad for your back, squats are bad for your knees, all that bullshit, right? But one thing she did teach me at that same point in time was, stop looking for the fucking pain, is what she told me. I had neck pain, and she's like, stop looking for it. Leave it alone. Pretend it's not there, because if you start fixating on it, it gets worse. And she's 100% correct. And I've seen this. I've seen people stay in pain for a year because they're so fucking stubborn and controlling. And they seek control over that which cannot be controlled, that they drive themselves crazy and delay the fucking healing because of their insane and unhealthy need for control.
Right. Yeah. I've heard, I love this little saying, treat the issue, not the tissue.
Exactly.
Right. That's one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's hard to talk to people about this because, the fundamentals are fucked up. Number one, there's this idea that you have control over things you don't actually have control over.
Right.
We lift to minimize the frequency at which we get pain. We lift to minimize the severity when it does happen. What's funny is, I think of some people off the top of my head that I've had to deal with this on. They get into pain, it goes away, they get stronger, it comes back, goes away, they get stronger, it comes back, and then you notice that the pain is going away faster each time, but yet they're just fixated on the fact that they're even getting pain, so therefore the lifting must not be working. And it's like, what standard are you holding yourself to? This idea that you will never hurt again, that is not a reasonable standard. Therein lies the fucking problem. It's like, you took 3 weeks to heal the first time, and the third or fourth time, it took you 2 days. How is that a degradation,
Yeah.
And you had the same pain for weeks before you even trained.
Right.
Remember that.
Exactly. Well, so, the thing is, pain is a very complex experience. It's not, I think a lot of people that don't have a background in anatomy and physiology, they have they have sort of an overly simplified idea of what causes pain. So they have like a very structural understanding of pain. Like I'm hammering a nail and oops, I missed and I hit my thumb. Okay, there was what do they call it? A noxious stimulus to the tissue of the thumb. You hammered the shit out of it. Okay, and then there's an impulse that goes to your brain and says, "Ow!" So
action
remove
potential.
Your thumb. Right. Okay. Yes, that does happen. Right. Obviously, everyone's touched a hot stove or hammered your thumb or whatever, jammed your toe in the floorboard. Okay. Well, that's one type of pain. But a lot of the pain we encounter as coaches is stuff that's much more nebulous, right? Back pain is the perfect example because it's often generalized, like my back hurts. And I get it too, my low back hurts. It's not like, it's not like L4 hurts or my right spinal erector hurts or even, like this area hurts. It's just my lower back hurts. Okay, well, that's a very different thing than like I smashed my thumb hurts where I smashed it, right? So there's something else going on. We also have things like referred pain that are very common. So a lot of people get sciatica, which is just that's not a thing. It's just a description of symptoms of pain basically some insult to the lumbar spine causes the nerve roots to get inflamed. Some aggravation happens, and then there's pain that starts shooting down the leg, down the sciatic nerve, right? And sometimes people feel this in their butt, like deep in their butt, or it goes down the back of their hamstring, or they feel it in the back of the knee. Sometimes all that, and then even down into the calf, right? That's referred pain because it was coming from somewhere else, but so where you feel it is not the problem. And you'll see these people. I was one of them years ago. I'd foam roll my hamstrings and my glutes, and I have my lacrosse ball, to make sure I massage my piriformis and you massage the shit out of it, and it never gets better. It never gets better. Sometimes it gets worse when you do all that. Well, it's because it wasn't coming from those areas anyway. But the point is, like, there's pain is a complex experience, and there's another element to it, which is the emotional element. And this is the biggest thing that has changed in my own life, pre-training versus after training, is when you anticipate pain because you've had an experience that caused pain, then it gets worse. Okay? Mm-hmm. So like, I have a bad back. I hurt my back really bad before and it really hurt. Now I'm afraid to use my back because if I do that, it might hurt again. And guess what? Your back starts hurting just because you think it's going to hurt.
Yeah, there's psychosomatic shit going on here.
Absolutely. And so, pain is a complex experience. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Mm-hmm. And it's there's many components that feed into it, and your mind and the way that you perceive pain is a huge component. Don't underestimate that. Last thing I'll say on it is I remember somewhere our colleague, Dr. Will Morris, mentioned this, and I thought, you know what? He's so right. In the experience I've had coaching, I've noticed this too. He said something to the effect of people that get to adulthood without ever having played a contact sport or some very physical, athletic endeavor, like skateboarding or something would work, or you played football or soccer or something. People that make it to adulthood that never had that experience often confuse hard effort and fatigue with pain. Mm-hmm. So training, they perceive as painful. They do a heavy set of 5 squats. They're like, oh, that hurt. It's like, no, it didn't hurt. That was just uncomfortable. But they don't know the difference. And so, that perception was, for a lot of people is rooted deep in childhood. You start learning when you're a little kid, but if you never have those physical experiences as a little kid and you make it to adulthood, you have no idea what you're feeling.
Exactly.
And, it's a hard road for those people. It's going to take a long time to build that skill because they didn't get it as a kid.
No, that makes sense. If you haven't had to work through it and you've gotten hurt for the first time, it's quite devastating. And that was me. I didn't really get seriously hurt as a kid or a teenager. I got hit by a car while on a bike at a stop sign, so it was a car that was braking, so it wasn't like, an insane accident. And that scraped up my shin, and that, rattled me a little bit. I've eaten shit on rollerblades a few times, fell off bikes, but
yeah, right.
Nothing crazy. I'm trying to think. I got in fights, a few fights, but I was not in any type of pain that required attention to the ailment, in the form of rehab of any sort.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you need to be like catastrophically injured to benefit, but like if you rollerblading, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you do active things as a kid, you're gonna fall on your ass or fall on your face or both, scrape your knees up. And you start to learn the difference between like, oh man, that hurts, versus like, you're wrestling with your dad or whatever, and like you're really tired and like, your lungs hurt. It hurts when you breathe because you're just so fatigued. There's a difference between those two things, but some people just don't get that. They have no physical practice growing up of any kind, right? And they never rollerbladed, they never skateboarded, they never played tackle football in the backyard or whatever. They never got poked with sticks out in the, hiking in the woods. And so that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I didn't have an injury that required rehab, And until I was 28, running my linear progression uncoached because, hey, I looked at the picture, I watched the video, I must be doing exactly what they're doing, right? Wrong. This stuff is not as idiot-proof as you want to think it is. Lifting is technical. And I got hurt, and I lost control of my body, and I had to rehab the adductor. That was my first experience with a serious injury. And 3 months later, I tore the other one. I got coaching, I fixed it, but then I didn't realize that, hey, wait a minute, it gets heavy, and then I get form creep again. I didn't know that at the time, so I wasn't getting coached to the heavier ones, and I did the same stupid thing again. Now, I was a real dumbass, because there were warning signs. I felt the pain for a couple weeks leading into it and kept training through it. And it's one thing to train, it's so subjective. There's things that I've trained through, and they settled down, in the process of doing that. But this was something that just kept getting tighter, and it was obvious that it was trending in the wrong direction, and it was over a series of workouts. So,
right.
For a lot of people, it's common sense not to do that. I have that mindset of a competitor, where I'm like, well, I want to get away with it because I want the PR. I don't quite have that now because of that experience. But, I had it then, and, I paid for it. I had 10 months where I couldn't squat heavy. But my deadlift went up, and it needed to because I was undertrained. Anyhow, I digress. The point is, that taught me to work through that. And in that experience, I also, had the hernia that got aggravated during that time. And then I had a bone bruise because I was catching my cleans in my hands, just doing it wrong,
Oh, yep.
So then I learned how to catch them on my shoulders. But bone shit will last, man. You might have that for a year,
I got that benching in high school. I remember that.
Scaphoid?
It was anything, because I was holding the bench deep in my palm. I wasn't stacking it over the eminences of my palms like I was supposed to. Yeah, I remember that. Months. That just hurt. I couldn't take out anything over like 185 because it hurt so bad.
Dude, it's terrible. It's fucking terrible. But, just a bunch of shit at once. So I had to make up for lost time, I suppose, And, the years, and the thing is about the adductor, I was dealing with a friend who was also in pain. What did she tweak? I think it was a lat, And the difference in both of our responses was dramatic. Like, this lady kept fixating on the fucking injury and trying to will it to go away, try to take control of the healing process. You can't take control of the healing process. You can do things that have a good chance of accelerating it, but you don't get to decide when it's done. It finishes on its own, it has its own timeline that it works on, and you have little control over that.
Right.
It's obviously better to do some things versus others. Generally, if you rest and do nothing, it will linger longer or heal fucked up. Generally, if you move it through a proper range of motion and rehab it properly, provided it's not something that requires surgery, it will heal efficiently and over a shorter period of time than if you don't do anything. But you don't get to control the timeline. Like the idea, when a PT would say, 6 weeks, 3 months, 1 month, they throw timelines at you. You have no fucking idea. These things have a mind of their own, and you might retweak it, sneezing, So the thing is, that's how she was reacting, just massage, chiropractor, rehab exercises, all this shit, and it just kept taking forever. And meanwhile, I'm over here barely able to walk and not saying a word, I just zoned out, and I'm like, let's just go about my day, walk normal, keep my motor patterns consistent, try to squat what I can, work up, it's hurting again, go back down for 10 months. And then suddenly it was just kind of gone, and I did a meet, before the whole year passed. And I remember her saying, she's like, I forget that you're hurt sometimes, And
yeah.
This is something, I don't know, if it has to do with being a competitor or what. Some competitors are big babies about this. I don't know if that's what it is, but like anxiety, right? Anxiety under the bar. I can maybe count on one hand how many times that's actually been an issue for me. Usually it's not.
Sure. Yeah.
I can just kind of, from a young age, like even in swimming, I just was a natural at channeling that to use it as productive energy, And I learned in my master's, there was a few things that, I learned in academia that were pretty valuable, and one of them was that you have two types of anxiety. There's cognitive, what's going on in your brain, what you're thinking of. And then there's somatic, and that's the anxiety you feel physically. And you can use that productively, or it can be very destructive. You can psych yourself out in a competitive situation, or you can use that energy to compete at a higher level, right? You can express your peak performance using that energy. And that's something that I've always just kind of done. And learning about it academically was interesting. It was in a sports psychology class. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I try to contextualize it. I'm like, well, I do that. That's pretty cool,
super
I got to be good at
interesting.
something, people. I'm not that fucking strong and I'm not that big, but there's a couple things I could do. And that's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've noticed this in the lifters that I've handled on the platform that, some of them, some of them you have to calm down because they get super worked up, and you've got to sort of like be the calm energy in the room. So every time they come to you, every time you interact with them, you're just chill. And I really try to control my energy, not get too loud, not get too hyped up, not walk around too fast, because they feed off of that. And other people need kind of the opposite. They need to get fired up. And then there's some that just can get locked in, just right in there. And they're super chill, they're relaxed, but then it's sort of like they step on deck, between on deck and stepping on the platform, they are just locked in. Our friend Dr. Pewter did an episode on his podcast, the Psychiatry and Psychotherapy podcast, about the dorsal vagal system. And I'm not going to attempt to describe this because I'm just going to fuck it up. But he was talking about that exact thing. And essentially, there are different states of cognition that we can be in. And there's like this sympathetic system that we can flip into when we get in that sort of fight or flight mode. And that's what happens when that anxiety just builds up and you lose your ability to concentrate and you lose your fine motor skills. And good athletes find this edge in between. Like, you don't want to be too calm, but you also don't want to be so jacked up and anxious that you lose all your ability to control, right? And so there's like kind of this like edge that you can walk, and it's actually kind of a different system that has been identified, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And anyway, so yeah, but he remember him talking about like the way that you train yourself out of getting into that fight or flight mode all the time is exposure without danger, right? You need to expose yourself to slightly nerve-wracking situations, but ones that you can handle because you've prepared yourself to handle them. And then the accumulation of a bunch of those situations helps train your brain to know, like, hey, look, this is more weight than I've ever done before, but hey, this is 315, but I did 310 before that, and I did 305 before that, and I did 300 before that, et cetera, et cetera. So you can build this ladder of experiences, which slowly push you just a little bit more into that outside of your comfort zone. And once you've done that a lot, you begin to believe that you can do the next step easier. And that's what's happened to me. I still get butterflies when I take out a really heavy squat. If it's just that level has gone up over the years, and the butterflies are not as intense as they used to be.
Yeah, and you adapt to it. And,
you adapt to it.
We could do a whole episode on that, but I think the theme here is that your mind can do a whole lot of damage to your training, to your healing. If you're hurt.
Right.
And it could also cause injury. I noticed that when people are anxious going into a workout, injuries have happened. I remember noticing that my first year, not necessarily people I was coaching, but other people, and then a few of lifters I've coached over the years. It's just, I tell people, I'm like, if you're too anxious to fucking lift it and you can't manage that, then you need to not lift it. Just, take weight off if you cannot manage it, because I don't want you getting hurt under my bar. I might call you a pussy afterwards, but my point is, you need to learn how to work through that, because that in itself could cause injury, mismanaged anxiety.
Right.
And, that we'll save that for the broader topic on that. But the main thing is, you got to get control of your mind, people. We're in the business of trying to get stronger. So we're trying to get from point A to point B. So in doing that, we get this illusion of control, right? But it's an illusion, right? Because guess what? 3:15 Monday, 3:20 next Monday, 3:25 the following Monday, 3:30 the following Monday, 3:35 the following Monday, 3:40. Oh shit, I just got 3 instead of 5. What the fuck? But you thought you were going to get 5. That is the illusion of control, people. You don't actually have control over this shit. You have control over your decisions. Your decision to show up, to load the bar up, to sleep, to not sleep, to drink,
to eat
alcohol, to not drink alcohol, to eat, to not eat. There's decisions that you are making, and you have the most control over those, right? But you do not have control over what happens to you, when you try all this shit, right?
Right.
And, we're always trying to gain it. We're humans. We're trying to gain as much control over it as we can. We miss a rep. We try to figure out why. We try to make modifications. We change a variable, and we move on, right? But we still can't control the outcome. We're trying to influence the outcome. I think that's a better word for it. I don't want to get into nuance here, but the whole point is you have to understand that this thing you think is control is an illusion. You don't actually have control over the outcomes. You can influence them and maximize your chances for a given outcome, but you don't have control over it. There have been times that I've, went for heavy deadlift, and the thought that I might get hurt has crossed my mind, but then I remember what I said earlier. I'm like, well, you better cancel that shit because it might actually fucking happen, dumbass,
Yeah.
And I've worked through that, but there have been other times where, I had tendonitis since January. It's pretty much almost gone. It's down to my left arm now, and it's mild. And I've had to change variable after variable to try and settle that down, and it's improved over time. But at no point did I sit there and dwell, why does my fucking arm hurt? It won't fucking stop. I'm going to go get a massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, spend all this money, spend all this time. And, those things have their place, people. But at the end of the day, I knew what the problem was. I'm like, I have tendonitis. There's too much stress being applied to the structure in some way. I addressed the technical issues. I started changing the way I did certain bicep exercises to minimize the risk of aggravating that. I changed how often I was stressing it with intensity. I adjusted the volume for when I was doing lighter weeks, so I did light heavy. And there was a series of other modifications that I made to what I was doing while still trying to push my goal, right? And none of those things controlled the outcome, but they influenced it to go one way or another, right? So it's generally been getting better. So what I've been doing has been working, but guess what? It's still there. I don't think about it. I'm thinking about it now because I'm talking to you about it. It's an example of how this actually works, right? And you can't let it stress you out and have a fucking panic attack because it's not going away as fast as you want it to. We live in an era of instant gratification. A lot of us want it. It's baked into the cake. We use smartphones. We can get information quickly. We can do a lot of things quickly. And then it's easy to get sucked into this path of wanting things to happen quickly that simply just do not happen quickly, people. And, injuries are one of them. And
and the whole field of chiropractic medicine, or whatever is is built on that, right? It's the idea is like you walk in, they crack your back, and then you go out and you feel good for about 4 or 5 days until you got to go back and then do it again, and then again and again and again forever, right? Now I understand there are chiropractors out there that do more than that, but they're the outliers.
Yep.
In my experience, but. It's easy, it's passive, right? The modalities that are the least effective in my experience are the passive ones, where someone does something to you, or you take a drug and it does something to you and you just lay back and let it happen. Those just don't tend to work very well in my experience. They can be good in certain circumstances, limited circumstances. Hey, massage feels great. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I get a massage, feels great, but I don't pretend like it's going to make structural changes that are going to help anything. It just feels good, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I have some guys that have gone to a chiropractor when they tweak their back really bad, and they'll go for a handful of times. Okay, fine. If it helps you, makes you feel better, great. But we also don't get stuck in this idea that I need my chiro or else I just can't function.
No, all those things can be Band-Aids, if you don't address the structural problem that, you're just not strong, But or you need surgery. Sometimes that's the case.
And that's right. And those are the other thing too that's important here. This is more psychology, is that those are passive. Other people do them for you. Training is something you do for yourself. Right? That's an active modality.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to go do. Movement is active modality. And I think there are actual training does actually help things for a variety of reasons, but there's also a psychological element, right? You're doing something for yourself, not letting someone else dictate
Exactly.
how it's going to go.
In defense of the chiropractors, and I'm going to probably help some of them get business, it's an X-rated story, but I'm not going to go into the details. But it's relevant to the discussion. A person I know, I don't want to give it away. I don't think he listens to this podcast, but I know him, and he's close to me. Engaged in a sexual act, nothing amoral or weird, pretty normal sexual act, and he dislocated his jaw. And he went to a chiropractor, and the guy popped his jaw, and he was fine, never had that problem again. So it is known to work in certain circumstances. So in this circumstance, it did work. But he dislocated his jaw. I don't know if he actually dislocated. He did something to his jaw where it fucking hurt in the middle of the act. And he went to a chiropractor. They did their thing, and it was gone. So it's not 100% bullshit. That's my point.
To our earlier point, we don't know that the act caused the pain.
That's true. Maybe it was already there.
Oh my God.
Correlation is not causation.
My mind is running wild with possibilities. No, yeah, I totally agree. But chiropractors definitely have their role. I look at them very similar to massage therapists. And I'm talking about traditional chiropractic, not your like awesome, cool, like 1 in a million chiropractor that's out there that knows about barbell training. Yeah. There are a few out there, but yeah, I kind of look at them. They're similar to massage therapists in my mind. Yeah. They provide a service which feels good, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's what you need to get over. I got a couple of guys that are older guys. They're in their 50s, 60s. And they have bad backs, right? I guarantee you, if we scan their back, did an MRI, actually I know in one case, they've got pretty significant stenosis, which means that, I was talking about referred pain earlier. It means that the little bony canals that their spinal cord runs through and then exits out of in the vertebrae, they're narrow. There's like bony growth in there, and those canals are very narrow. So that means that any insult to the nervous tissue, if it gets inflamed for whatever reason, it got nowhere to go. It starts swelling up, and it starts pushing on bone, and it just lights up their whole leg and their back, and it sucks. Okay, well, traction force tends to help those guys, and chiropractors have good tools for applying traction force on the back, or tension, whatever you want to call it, pulling apart. Okay, so they go to the chiropractor and it helps them get over the bad tweaks, in the first several days of insult. That's fine. I think the problem is when you start relying on those people for everyday function, and when they become a crutch that you have to have, or else you just can't get along in life. Not a position you want to be in.
No, it's no fun.
Well, so we've talked a whole lot about psychology and not as much about like the science of,
'Cause you got enough of that shit, people. You are being bombarded with that shit. There's an entire injury industrial complex within the fitness industry,
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Right. I just mentioned MRIs, man. Oh gosh. You get imaging, and I've been in this situation many times as a coach. Someone goes and gets an MRI because it's, indicated. It's okay. We need to see what's going on here. And those reports are awfully scary, L4, L5, moderate to severe stenosis.
L5S1.
Yeah, right. It goes down the list. Oh my God, I'm broken. It's like, no, dude, you've lived with that for probably decades. It's just that now we have a problem. So yeah, there's a whole industry there that's not, they're not invested in your function so much as like, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I think the reason
we'll do a rehab episode on the physical part of it, the movement part of it, with
Yeah.
probably double D or Will, depending on who's available.
Yeah, we can talk to someone more qualified to handle that. But the reason I talk about psychology is that the fact is that when you have a tweak, whether it's a minor one or a bad one, or heaven forbid, even you have an injury, it throws a wrench in your confidence that we described earlier. And it breaks that trust that you've developed with your body, and you've got to rebuild that. And the only way you can do that is through exposure without danger. And the degree of the tweak is going to determine how you approach that. For me, I had this very minor little tweak. It's just a hip thing. But I knew it could get worse when I squatted because, I had to do a bunch of volume, and, a bunch of volume can aggravate things if they're, if they're already pissed off. Okay. So I had to approach that with a little bit of caution. A bad tweak, you might have to, so like I had a guy recently, this is a younger guy, not an older guy. He's got pretty shitty genetics for his back. He's tweaked his back several times since we've been training, and he did it again. This time was at his job, and he had to lift some really heavy equipment in an awkward position, and he knew he was in an awkward position and probably shouldn't have done that, and then he regretted it afterwards. Well, so we started rack pulling. So we controlled the range of motion doing it. So basically got him moving his back, doing a very short range of motion with a rack pull. And he was feeling pretty good. So a couple weeks after the initial tweak, he was rack pulling, let's say, I want to say 80 to 85% of where he had left off before the tweak happened. Okay, so decently heavy. And he tweaked his back again, kind of without warning. It felt good, and then the last rep, bam. Okay, so, again, I don't know that the rack pull really had much to do with that. In my opinion, we were working at perfectly reasonable loads. We weren't being super aggressive with coming back. But now he's pissed off about it, and he's a little anxious about it. So in this case, I opted to take a slow, long progression where I control his loads. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do rack pulls. I have him doing RDLs with very, very light weights. And we might take 6 weeks to get back to the loads he was moving before if everything goes smoothly. Okay? Does he need 6 weeks? From a physical, just purely can he do it standpoint, I don't think so. But he needs it mentally, right? And so that's how that's how he's going to get over these 2 successive moderate to severe back tweaks. So your experience is going. So the level of tweak that you have is going to determine how this process goes and how you approach it. But the point is still, we're going to get him in the gym. He's going to move his back. He's going to move some load. And we're going to just gradually increase that load. And again, exposure without danger.
Exactly. And then you just work it back up. And
work it back up. We won't go to the floor for 6 weeks, probably. Not because he can't, but just, because that would be the danger part, right? Keeping his back extended off the floor over a longer range of motion. That's harder. It's maybe a little bit more anxiety inducing. Mm-hmm. But he will eventually.
And, sometimes you need surgery, simple as that. My girlfriend gets hip pain when she does any type of axial loading. She can't squat anything heavy, front, back, overhead. Squats aren't happening. She has femoral acetabular.
FAI.
Yeah, you knew it. Yep, FAI.
Okay.
With a torn labral tear that's about 6 years old now. And that's not, she's not going to ever have a big, heavy squat until that gets repaired or replaced, Yeah. And she's on the side of, let it get bad enough till I get a replacement because I don't want to get the repair to get a replacement later. I feel her.
Right.
So, she can leg press really heavy, though. That's appendicular loading, different situation, The load is on the feet, not on the spine. So we pushed up her leg press, But, there's no fancy rehab exercise to fix her torn labrum or get her hip to stop hurting when she squats. She just can't squat heavy. She does the movement up to a certain point, and then she gets the intensity on her lower body from the leg press. Then she does a bunch of isolation shit that she, probably doesn't need, but, she likes to do it. So, You got to do things you like, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, training's got to be fun at some level.
Yeah, until you're
you got to keep something in
until you're at our level, then everything fucking sucks. But
right. I just want to get out of the gym as soon as possible.
Yeah, but sometimes you need surgery. You have torn rotator cuff. Like I get guys that try to work up their bench. Shoulder starts hurting eventually. Then the press starts hurting. Right. Then everything upper body starts hurting. And you look at the problem, and I'm like, all right, technique's not the limiting factor. We've addressed all these things. Bro, go get a fucking MRI because that is a surgery that's probably worth getting, Now, back surgery is not worth getting. You want to avoid that at all costs is the general consensus on that. It's not. It's got mixed reviews. It's risky. You don't want fucking back surgery. So I can see why you wouldn't want to get imaged unless you were considering that. But like a shoulder that keeps coming back for years and years and years, yeah, go get that looked at. A hip, I've had guys, they walk in here and I could tell by their gait that there's something fucked up in their hip, and then their back hurts doing warm-up sets. And I know that hip problems can manifest as back pain. Back pain is a symptom of having osteoarthritis in the hips. I've seen it, But then the stubborn fuckers will not get it looked at and delay this, and oftentimes they're older. And I'm like, you want to wait till you're 75? You got a 65-year-old back that's hurting because of a 65-year-old hip, and you keep delaying this. Just out of apathy and stubbornness, And something like a hip, that's got a good prognosis. Most people that get hip replacements are better off than before they had the hip replacement, But, I just sit there and I watch and I'm like, okay, I see all the classic movements. You're kind of waddling, and you don't even know you're doing it. You're walking like your hip's fucked up. And then your problems on the squat, typically, lots of knee slide with these people because the fucking...
Yeah, I was about to say,
You see a lot of knee slide, vertical back angle.
They hit the bottom and things start moving around.
Exactly. The back angle gets vertical and it's not a matter of movement. They can't get into that position because you got bone on bone going on. And, they either don't want to hear it. Surgery is a big deal. I understand that. But how many times you want to keep throwing out your back with, a light deadlift,
Right.
And it's not the deadlift's fault. Your hip's fucked up. It's pretty obvious. So I've seen that before too. So like something like hips, knee replacements, rotator cuff repair, shoulder labrum.
Shoulders, especially with athletes. I've seen that a lot with people who are competitive, in sport, baseball, swimming.
Yep.
Swimming.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, sometimes you need surgery. Don't be fucking stubborn about it. I can see it if it's back surgery, you get a pass on that. I understand that. But, sometimes you need surgery. And the sooner you get the fucking surgery, the sooner you can train again and train further than you are now,
Yeah, I would say that in general, in my experience as a coach, not a PT, so I don't see a clinical population, but as a coach, people that, are interested in general strength training, surgery it's rare. It's not like a lot of people need it. And I think a lot of people that think they need it because a doctor might have told them that, probably don't. But there are cases where there's really no option. There's no other option. The good thing is that there's so many things that you can exhaust beforehand, before you go down surgery route, right? So, have you been coached? Are you moving correctly? Like, that's one thing we can rule out. Do you have good programming? Maybe it's time to get a coach to give you reasonable programming. Some people aggravate injuries that they could train around otherwise with shitty programming, right? They just got to, fix the programming. Sometimes just I've had people with shoulder issues where we just kind of use a combination of close grip benches, neutral grip benches, incline press, whatever we can to kind of work around the issue, and they're fine. Do they need shoulder surgery? Well, if they wanted to be a high-level competitive athlete, then yeah, probably. But if they're just interested in general strength training, they can train around that problem. Even if the problem will never be solved without surgery. So, I'll just throw that out there. It's not as common as you might think, but there are definitely circumstances where there's no other option.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to do it, but yeah, it is rare.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go. There's so many different places we could take this topic. I think we stuck primarily with the psychological today, which I think is appropriate. But yeah, in the future, I think we should definitely get on one of our colleagues that's an expert in this field of rehab and talk about that, talk about what that process looks like, because it's super interesting. I've gotten to experience that being mentored by some PTs that are excellent, but I'm certainly not an expert myself. I just get to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the business of working with 5, 6, 7 decade old backs and knees and hips and joints in general, and you have to troubleshoot these things, and it's not entirely complicated. And if we get Will on here, he has a whole spiel on that, on how he believes physical therapy is a pseudoscience. His words, not mine. Although I don't disagree with him, for the record.
Yeah.
But him and I did a talk years ago, and we might do another one. We were talking about this yesterday, and he pretty much described his field and, explained that a lot of this stuff, most coaches can manage, if you have critical thinking skills and understand the human body,
Sure.
You don't need a bunch of, schooling on these cookie cutter modalities, oftentimes that aren't working, and the injuries are often healing as a function of time,
Right.
Or you're being taught to bend your elbow again, it's, these people get way too much credit, more credit than they deserve, and they formulate opinions on things they have no experience with, and as do many people in the medical business, the healthcare business. Doctors think they can fix your television set and then bill you for it. They can fix your car too. They can help you with anything you ask them questions on, unfortunately. And the PT is kind of trending in that direction, especially in our realm. We teach people how to move and how to move at very high levels of performance, right? So they want to make judgments about that without understanding any of it. They're helping you. They're helping your mother bend her arm again. They're helping people walk again after a stroke. They're not getting people strong. They're not teaching a squat.
That's right.
And a deadlift.
That's right. So they're dealing with clinical populations.
Yeah.
And very sick people, very detrained people.
Yeah. So you and I don't deal with that. So, I'm not going to take somebody who just had a stroke and walk them through that. I don't have a system or model in my head to refer from in that situation. I have a general understanding of it, but I'm not the guy you call for that. I'm not licensed to do that in a clinical setting, and that's fine. But, if I got a guy with a 60-year-old back that periodically hurts, and it turns out that it's hurt him since he was 18, I can work with that. That's something we can work
Absolutely.
with. And
Absolutely.
the goal is to be less shitty at that point, because a 60-year-old back will be a 61-year-old back, and if he lives long enough, might be an 80-year-old back, and
That's right.
It's going to decline, just like you're going to lose muscle mass. We're not living forever here, people. The body declines, cars decline, things get older. We're trying to stave that off and improve the situation. I could tell you right now, my father and my stepfather, both similar age, when they were my age, back pain out the wazoo, man. One of them was a truck driver. My stepfather was a truck driver. He delivered beer, so he had to load his own truck, unload his own truck, put it away. He was just constantly lifting cases of beer all day. And it won't, before that, kegs, but most of his career was cases. And, it doesn't sound like much, but when you have these 24-pack of bottles stacked up on top of each other, and you're doing one after another, constant rotation of the back, because I'm sure they don't teach you how to properly use your back. They have that stupid OSHA chart, lift with your legs, not your back, but they don't really emphasize the problem with rotation. So I'm sure there was a lot of loading and rotation going on with his body. So his back, the spine hates rotation. You could get away with flexion with quite a bit of intensity. But flexion plus rotation is where you start running into problems.
That's, it's the classic pick the lawnmower up, with a lot of flexion, and then
rips.
Twist and turn it and put it in the truck.
Old rips fucking example. But I don't want to go too deep into that. That's just for another episode. But what I'm trying to say is both of my my stepfather and my father, both worked in manual labor, and both had bad backs in their early 30s, so younger than I am now. And meanwhile, I've deadlifted, close to triple my body weight. And I continue to add weight to the bar year after year. I'm thankful I've been able to do that, because, some people get injured quite easily doing far less. But the point is, I think because I've done that, I have learned how to control my body, because I think some of their injuries come from the things I just described, just poor movement patterns. But, I've been able to get strong. I started doing this. I started squatting when I was 18, I started deadlifting when I was 18, but I just didn't do that one as consistently. I started consistently deadlifting when I was 27, 28. And I continue to do it, and I don't have those back problems that, my male role models had when I was growing up. Pretty much I think every man I knew that was over 30 had bad back, when I was growing up. And I know a lot of men over 30 now that have bad backs. I get people hiring me that are younger than me with bad backs. So,
sure,
it's a byproduct of being a biped. You walk and compress your spine all day, and if you develop bad habits on top of that and don't have strong connective tissues and muscles attached to that spine, it only makes the problem worse. So,
that's right.
You're not, if you have a bad back, chances are it's hurt when you were a child or adolescent. And chances are it's going to continue to fucking hurt the rest of your life, but, get strong and it'll hurt less,
That's right. And you'll be useful when it hurts. That's the thing.
That's a good point you bring up, because I don't really consider that when I'm talking about this.
It's
but
not
you're
going
right.
to lay you up on the couch for 3 days, and you're useless. Like, you can still pick your kid up. You can go haul shit out in your backyard. Whatever you have to do, it's not going to slow you down. It hurts, and that sucks that it does. But you're also not laid up. I have one last thought.
Mm-hmm.
Closing thought. I believe very strongly in this. I've watched a lot of people that I know personally, and I've also some of my clients that have unfortunately gotten injured. Sometimes it's just a tweak that, in my opinion, they catastrophize. Sometimes it's an injury. Luckily, I haven't seen too many of those in my career, but it does happen. But anyway, they interact with the medical complex at some point, because they need help that I'm not able to provide. Mm-hmm. Usually they need some imaging or something just to figure out what's going on, so they can troubleshoot. And I've seen some people start to interact with doctors and other medical professionals, and then it's all of a sudden it's sort of like, I've been delivered into the Savior's hands. Like, they're going to figure it all out, and they're going to take care of me, and I don't have to do anything now. And there's just whatever the doctor says, that's it. It's gold plated. And my problem with that is not necessarily what the doctor says. Now, sometimes they say some really stupid stuff, but sometimes they say some reasonable stuff too. That's not my problem with it. My problem is I've watched people give up their agency going into the medical complex. Mm-hmm. They stop being the one in control of how things are going to go, in control of the rehab.
The decision making.
That's right. And here's the thing. This is the illusion. Your doctor doesn't give a shit. Like, yes, I think most doctors probably want to do a good job, but they don't have any personal investment in your rehab. They can't. It's not them, right? It's not the same thing treating someone else as it is going through it yourself. And you are in control. Treat people that you interact with in the medical industry as consultants, which is what they are. You come to them, they have an expertise in a particular field, and you're consulting their expertise and asking their opinion, which you will take under consideration. Okay, but the thing is, a lot of them have a bedside manner where they're sort of like, I know everything, here's what's going on, here's what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do here, you're going to come back to me in 2 weeks after doing that, and we're going to do another one of these follow-ups. Bam. No questions asked. Unfortunately, I've had plenty of interactions with doctors like that. But the thing is, they're not in control. They don't get to make that decision. You still have agency. You get to control how these things go. And the same thing is true with your training. We can dial this all the way back down to a much more mundane level. When you have a little tweak, you get to decide how it goes. Mm-hmm. You can still go in the gym and try things out, start to move, start to see what you can do, make notes, And I think when you do that and you make a habit of that in your life, you're going to become happier, and you're also going to become more confident. And I think your outcomes are going to be better as a result. It's a positive feedback loop. When you start handing over agency to other people, that's just a recipe for unhappiness, anxiety, etc.
Just remember, you're not in control of the outcome, but you are in control of the decision making, even if you are consulting with people who know more than you. That's right. The buck stops with you. You make the final decision. Most people in charge of businesses, a lot of them have no idea how the production works, or have a general idea, but they're not experts in how the production works. They know enough of it to understand what it is they're selling and manufacturing, distributing, etc., but they're not expert producers, But at the end of the day, they consult with everybody at every level of the business, and then they make the final call based on the information that they have available, right? And you have to educate yourself enough on this thing, like you're not a surgeon, but you have to educate yourself enough on surgery to make sure you're not getting set up to get fucked up more. And that goes with anything, right? Like with the stuff here, right?
That's
Read
right.
what we're doing and then ask us all about it. We have a bunch of rationale for you, and we'll explain why we're doing what we're doing. That's a sign of a good, competent professional. But, don't give up your power to make decisions. Do not do that. That is the worst thing you can do. And you're gonna get what you put into that.
That's right.
Yeah. So you are the decision maker. These people are your consultants. They work for you. You're the one who has to go under the knife. You're the one who's going to get the bill. Of some
That's
size.
Right. Yep.
And even if you have really good insurance that covers that, same deal. Don't give up. You make the final call.
That's right. And it can be really tough when you're in that situation and you're scared or unsure, if something major happens. But it's still true. Well,
so
yeah,
that was a lot. We had
that's a lot
to say
there.
about that.
Yeah, that's. I mean, to be fair, our colleagues who are PTs have entire podcasts about this topic. So there's we could go in many other directions there, but hopefully that gives you some food for thought. Train your brain, man. Train your brain.
Yep.
You're more resilient than you think.
Yeah, it's just one of my advisors. One of the things he reminded us of in a class was that it's very hard to kill a human, and it's true. I mean, outside of pulling the trigger and shooting somebody, that's pretty easy, but assuming you hit the person. But he said it's very hard to kill a human, and I would agree with that, having worked in a clinical setting and seen some of the shit people get away with.
Oh yeah.
So you're not this fragile little piece of glass. You're not. And these injuries often feel worse than they do. Just like a set of 5 squats that you could probably do for 7 or 8 feels worse than it actually is. Pain sucks, and if you're not used to it, it sucks even more. It's startling, it's stressful, it's anxiety provoking. It's not a fun thing. I'm not saying jump for joy when you get hurt, but it's not the end of the world. And getting strong is going to set you up for less of it in the long run. But it doesn't mean you will never, ever, ever feel an ache or pain again. We live in a world of mortality. We're all going to die. Things are going to run down, and shit's going to hurt periodically, especially with age. So you still need to train. That's you're listening to us. That means you have an interest in training. So that's what we're here to tell you. That's our part. You still need to train. You should still take care of your body and eat well. You should try to sleep well. There's lots of things you should be doing. But the broad answer here is pain doesn't mean you stop training. You'll probably get pain again if you do, and in fact more. Or what I've seen is people stop training for a decade. Then their back ages 10 years, and then it comes back,
Yep.
So there's no escaping this shit. You're given a deck of cards, and you don't have control over that. If you were given a fucked up back, you can make it less fucked up by getting stronger, but you're not going to unfuck it. You're not going to completely unfuck it in most cases. There are cases where, it never happens again because the person just lifts, and that is great. We love when that happens. It's awesome to see. But in most cases, you're just improving. You're taking a shitty situation to a less shitty situation to maybe a more optimal situation. Just depends. Depends on who you are. But you cannot change the cards you were dealt. That is there to stay, and we're here to help you improve the situation and make the best of it. But we're not claiming we're fucking going to cure anything. That's not what we do here.
No.
We can cure your weakness, and make you
That's right.
less weak or maybe even real strong. You might surprise us. Might squat 800. Hasn't happened in my gym yet, but it'd be cool if I had a completely naive motherfucker that worked himself to an 8 squat,
Hey, never say never.
I mean, if that happened, that would be fucking cool. I'm not a big powerlifting fan. I know I train people for meets, and I like hanging out at the meets. But I'm not a power lifter. I don't like competing in them. But, I'm just like the rest of us. We're strength coaches. We like to see the extremes. It's like the circus,
Oh, yeah.
And I would love to get some big, naive motherfucker that works in some white-collar job that has all this strength he never tapped into, and then he just squats 800
Yeah.
over the course of,
awesome.
time. If he did it on the first day, that'd be fucking insane, but I don't think that ever happens. So, yeah, I think this is a good time to close out.
Alrighty, let's do it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com. My gym is located in South Mountain Village, just south of the airport in Phoenix, Arizona. You should definitely drop by if you're in the neighborhood. I offer online coaching consults on my website, and I have a couple other RDs that do as well. You can find me on Instagram. That's where I post most of my content. I have a little bit of YouTube now. I'm starting to post my workouts there, but you can find me on Instagram at _Robert_Santana. And the gym has a page that needs to be updated so bad. Weights _and _plates.
All right. You know where I am at marmalade_cream. That's the name of my Instagram handle. And it's also the name of my audio production company, marmaladecream.com. I also do coaching. JonesBarbellClub@gmail.com if you want to talk to me there. All right, catch y'all again in a couple weeks.